This woman was competing in tennis matches. She's ran like 70 something half marathons and marathons. She just finished one last weekend. And she looks phenomenal. Everyone thinks we're still sisters. Even now at 64 and 45 years old, we did a photo shoot together in my family 2 weeks ago, and everyone's like, that's your mom. And so she just came out on the other side of that, just winning life. And I know that's not always the case for all women. Like sometimes we come out of perimenopause and we still have some of those symptoms. But man, for my mom, it was like a complete 180. She went from hell to like just winning in every area of her life. And so I really want that to be all of our stories. Honestly, I want that to be my story.
Well, it is a real pleasure to have Mariza Snyder on the show today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Zora.
So we were having a little discussion before we hit record because we wanted to shift things a little bit. And I think today we're going to talk a little bit about hormone therapy, bioidentical, and your thoughts on that. And then some of the things that we can do to balance our hormones to get through this menopause transition with a little bit of ease through some diet and lifestyle changes. And you know a lot about essential oils, and I have not recorded a podcast, anything about essential oils. I do like them, but I think if you wrote several books on them, you got some very interesting information for us. And you even wrote a book on essential oils for menopause. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as well. So let's first give the audience a little bit about your background and how you got into this space, and then, what your opinions are on hormone therapy.
Well, I'm going to start actually, because I have so many, I feel like every woman, we have so many evolutions with our hormones. Because if there's anything that I can guarantee is that we are constantly shifting throughout the month, throughout our lifetime. We go through so many cycles. And up until I would say even 2010, there wasn't a lot of discussion around our hormones. And most of us had no idea about our menstrual cycle. I grew up, I'm Catholic and Mexican, and I grew up with a Mexican Catholic grandma, and your period was something to be ashamed of. Like it's something you tolerated. It was something that like you didn't wish upon yourself every single month. And so I really grew up not appreciating my body. I had no idea that my menstrual cycle was really a vital sign and ultimately a superpower. It's what defines us as women to be women. And it wasn't until I was in my 30s that I really gained a deep appreciation for that. But also in my 30s, for a bulk of my life, I was in survival mode. I was addicted to stress and I didn't know it. I had no idea. I thought that was my superpower. Who knew? And I ended up burning out pretty early. And I remember being in practice with a lot of patients who were actually my age now. They were in their mid 40s or late 40s, and they had the exact same symptoms as I did at 31 years old. And I thought to myself, like, and not that it was okay for women in their 40s to be dealing with exhaustion, fatigue, insomnia, serious cravings, symptoms of insulin resistance, just having a hard time crawling out of bed every single morning. But I knew that at 31, that was not how I should be feeling. And I knew that if I continued at that rate, living the way that I lived, that my trajectory was not going to look good. And I dug not only into what was going on with my hormones, and I'll never forget running my hormones for the first time at 31. It literally, my labs may have said hot mess, like hormone hot mess. Like everything was deregulated. And I knew that a lot of how I was operating in the world was driving that. When we think about our hormones, they're chemical messengers. They're just doing the best that they can in the circumstances that they're in to create some level of equilibrium in the body. And mine were running around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to make it work for me. and so I implemented mostly lifestyle. At the time, the only hormones available, this was 2010. So the Women's Health Initiative had already happened 8 years prior where we shut everything down. It was hormonal birth control. Like that's what regulated your period. That's what fixed everything. And we know that those are unfortunately endocrine disruptors that don't actually fix or regulate your period. And so I knew that the levers that were going to get me better were going to be grounded in not only my metabolic health, my mitochondrial health, but also in realigning and calming down my nervous system. And so that's a lot of the work that I did in my 30s. At the same time, my mom was actually going through perimenopause. I was 30, my mom was 48. And it was interesting. So I was taking care of my mom at the same time I was trying to take care of me. We were literally dealing with a lot of the same things. And it really woke me up to what perimenopause was. And I knew that as I was watching and helping my mom navigate a very treacherous, I would say, journey, that I wanted to be somebody who was a part of the solution for women going through that profound transition. And so ever since I was in my 30s, I would say 31 years old, I've been taking care of women in perimenopause and menopause with an emphasis on perimenopausal women. I know we always talk about menopause being the thing. And it's what about the journey to get there, the dissension? And that's where I saw a lot of the chaos for so many women trying to reassess and recalibrate who they were in the process. And so I'm excited to dive into some of that today. But now that I'm in it, like full-fledged perimenopause woman, I'm just like, wow, this is something else. And I'm excited to be able to support women in it.
Well, it's so great that you, first of all, aware of it, and thanks to your mom going through this and kind of and being old enough for you to understand what was going on and learn about it. So it's fabulous your mom had you there by your side, but also now you have watched your mom go through this menopause transition as well. And now she's on the other side, and now you're going through it and you got all the tools for it. So let's then talk a bit about, did your mom go on hormone therapy? If I recall in some of your other podcasts, she did, and then she didn't.
So I'll just real quick share the story. So my mom, very similar to me, I think where I got that survival driven, she was a single mom with two girls. And so she had very single mom energy and barely made it by when we were little girls. And so I think by the time she was in her 40s, all of that lifestyle of survival kind of caught up to her. And maybe her hormones were always going to really kind of hit her heart. Some women, I mean, every women's perimenopausal journey is going to be different. When my grandmother went through perimenopause and menopause, we just gave them tranquilizers. That's what we did what I'm saying. Like, this is my mom will never forget when my grandmother came home from the doctor's office after a menopause visit. And she said she got a frontal lobotomy. She was an entirely different person as she was just put on tranquilizers. Mother's little helper, right? I think anyway, that's how we did women then. And so my mom going through perimenopause didn't really know what to think of it because my grandmother had basically just been given some tranquilized herself. And so my mom's journey, she was still working very hard. And initially, it was a little bit of hot sweats, night sweats. It was low energy, but then the mood changes became very, very disruptive. She had perimenopausal rage, severe irritation, mood swings, to the point where she went to her OBGYN and asked, is it normal for me to want to, or for somebody to want to kill somebody, have those kind of thoughts 5 days out of the month? And the woman was like, yeah. And that was it. That was the end of that conversation. And my mom just went back to like suffering. Finally, she went to somewhere else. Still to this day, the standard of care is not really to look at hormones at all, but just to kind of put you on something. And she was put on a synthetic estradiol. And looking back now, what had happened is whatever dosage they gave her, whatever she was on, however she was administered, it actually ended up driving more intense mood changes and deeper depression and also weight gain. So it didn't, often the things that we think about when we think about bringing on estradiol, like, you're talking about a light switch going on, it's like the light switch further went off. And so for her, 3 months into that journey, I guess the dosage didn't get changed and it made her worse. So she got off of it. I worked with her alongside of that. And a big part of what was going on with my mom is she was dealing with a lot of inflammation, but also she was running herself into the ground. And so I implemented a lot of supplementation. Obviously, I tailored her diet to really support her metabolic health. She was definitely insulin resistant at the time and used essential oils, but also a lot of lifestyle strategies to just calm her wayward sympathetic nervous system. And we got her through the worst of it, I would say the late perimenopausal years. And I will tell you, she had such a profound turnaround. Like, she's one of those success stories that you hear, like after they come through perimenopause, she was a completely different woman. This woman was competing in tennis matches. She's ran like 70 something half marathons and marathons. She just finished one last weekend. And She looks phenomenal. Everyone thinks we're still sisters. Even now at 64 and 45 years old, we did a photo shoot together in my family 2 weeks ago, and everyone's like, that's your mom. And so she just came out on the other side of that, just winning life. And I know that's not always the case for all women. Like sometimes we come out of perimenopause and we still have some of those symptoms. But man, for my mom, it was like a complete 180. She went from hell to like just winning in every area of her life. And so I really want that to be all of our stories. Honestly, I want that to be my story 100%. She's been such a big inspiration to me. Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I'm implementing everything that I implemented on her.
No, you got the experience too. So what's interesting? So I interview women around the world. I'm a nomad, so I travel a lot, and I stop women in the street and I ask them 5 questions about menopause if they're willing to answer. And when I find women who are post menopause and clearly beyond the weeds, they often like look at me like, it is so good on the other side. Like, just you wait. It's amazing. And you can't believe it, because these are women who've been through hell and back. Whether they use hormone therapy or not, it's not. And usually in most cases, it's not. And what I find interesting is that your mom, she was one of those. She kind of just white knuckled her way through it and suffered a lot. And I believe there's a lot of damage that still can be done if you do it, quote unquote, naturally, whatever that means, and not using hormone therapy. Imagine all the cortisol, all the stress hormones, all the things that are going on, not to mention what happens when you just are depleted from estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. But that's pretty tough on the body. And you come out winning on the other side, which is fabulous. Maybe you can make up for some of this damage. But your mother, I would love to know what did you implement with her? Because there's certainly women listening now who decide not to go on hormone therapy for one reason or another. And that's their choice. That's their right. There's no problem. It's none of my business. But what can we do to support that woman? What did you do for her that you could share with us today?
Absolutely. I don't think my mom would have an issue with me sharing that, but she's not on hormone replacement therapy today in her, I would say, 64 is technically still early 60s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So early 60s. And there's a part of me, I kind of want my mom on hormones. I'm not going to pretend like I don't, but she has really thrived. Also, we have a serious history of cardiovascular disease. Her brothers both had bypasses in their 50s. My grandfather had a quadruple bypass in his 50s, and my sister had a stroke when she was 42 years old. And so my mom and I are like, your cardiovascular health, I'm just trying to keep an eye on it. So I look at her labs a lot, and I have her run her labs twice a year just to keep an eye on things. But the thing I focused on most, like when I looked at her symptoms, so anytime I'm working with somebody, obviously, especially my family, it's looking at the way they're living their life. Like, how much can we really shift that? Looking at her goals, her symptoms, and then also looking at the lab. So I take all of that into consideration when I'm thinking about building a protocol. A big part of what was going with my mom is, again, she had some levels of insulin resistance. She was completely exhausted and tired. Her sleep patterns were off. And so let's start with circadian rhythm. So I one of the things I had her do was consistently getting up at the same time and making sure she got morning sunlight in the morning to help kind of awaken. Let's supercharge that cortisol awakening response, or supercharge those mitochondria. And one of the things that we know, if you consistently wake up at the same time every day, that is going to help to reset your biological clock so that you're getting deeper, more restful sleep at night. Then I also had her implement a sleep routine, and it didn't involve scrolling on her phone before she went to bed. So I was like, phone is put away an hour and a half before bed, and you're going to use your lavender and your cedar wood. You're gonna anchor yourself to a bed routine, whether that's taking supplements an hour before or using your oils an hour before, whatever that is. Like, let your brain know that it is time to wind down. So I think for her and for me, 45 minutes to an hour before bed, I take my supplements. My magnesium. I take a systemic enzyme to kind of help clean up any inflammation. I usually take, I have a number of things. My mom and I also
Spill the
take
beans. We want to hear which
I
supplements.
I also take, so I had her on magnesium glycinate. I had her taking some omegas before bed as well. If she forgot to take them during the day, I was trying to mitigate some of the inflammation she was dealing with. And then I had her taking, I have a, I have a supplement. I've had it in my line for a long time. It's called Zen Sleep. So I was having her take the Zen Sleep. It's got like passion flower and Roman chamomile, a tiny bit of melatonin, like 1 milligram. And it's got all the goods, right? It's got valerian root in it. And so some of those beautiful homeopathic or those herbal remedies. So I was having her take something like that. And then I made sure she had a little bit of water with electrolytes. And that was pretty much it. For me, I cycle progesterone. So that's always a part of my regimen as well. I take about anywhere between 100 and 300 milligrams of progesterone in the second half of my cycle. It's a part of my supplement routine.
Do you ever do rhythmic dosing of the progesterone too? Not only just cycling, but kind of starting at 100.
So I started at 100.
Then...
Yeah. By the time, like right now, I am on I'm 7 days away. So I took 300 milligrams last night, and then I'll be tapering back down to 100 in the next 5 to 6 days.
And you notice a big difference between just taking a static or dose of 100 milligrams for the 14 days?
I find that where my mood changes, my mood shifts begin to really happen is right after my peak. Mm-hmm. It's like I fall off a cliff. And so that's where I get really irritated and really edgy. And all of a sudden, all of my sweet mannerisms kind of go out the window. It's like they just left me. They're like, bye. And so that's when I really double up. So I go 100 the first 6 days. I pop up to 200 a couple days prior to that peak. I'm usually taking 300 back down to 200. But I find if I don't taper down, it's like I fall off a cliff right before my period.
It's amazing, actually. It's so different. I do similar, but just up to 200 and then down. I don't see any difference. The only difference is if I forget and keep going with the progesterone, my period doesn't come.
I'll kind of mess with that too. So if I know I have a bunch of big interviews or I just did not align my schedule with my cycle, I will keep taking progesterone for a couple of days to kind of give me a little extra bandwidth. And then after I stopped taking that 100, I was taking 200 all the way to the end. And then I would stop. It would take a couple of days for my period to come online. And it was like, again, it was like I fell off a cliff. And
you really felt out. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's true. So yeah, I'm tapering my progesterone down. And also I tend to have migraines around this right at my cycle, right at my period. And so I will put an estradiol patch on to mitigate the migraines. So I don't need a lot of estradiol still yet. So I feel like in perimenopause, we really have to tailor our hormone replacement therapy. And so mine's very tailored.
First of all, I totally get it. It's amazing what we can do when we can understand our bodies better. We can
bioharmonize. I call it bioharmonize.
Period. So I just had a hip surgery last month. Oh. And I saw that I was supposed to get a period like the day of the surgery. And I thought, what a horrible thing that will be.
No, thank you.
So I kept going
through. Yes.
Going until I felt like, okay, I can deal with tampons and all that. And I kept going and it hasn't come back yet. So I'm like, hey, I don't know if it's the trauma from the surgery or just went a little bit too long with the progesterone, but that's the beauty of understanding our bodies and playing around. But do you ever try rhythmic dosing of estradiol?
I was, but then, so it's interesting. And I know this is, gosh, we're also individual. I had a breast cancer scare earlier this year and it led me down all the way to a biopsy. Luckily nothing there. But my migraines have been really severe, sometimes up to 10 a month. And so we were trying rhythmic cycling of estradiol. But then for some reason I noticed some unopposed estradiol, even with decent amount of progesterone, like my boobs were super sore and lumpy. And so I was like, okay, maybe I should back up and figure this out a little bit more. So I've been running labs and we're trying to figure out how to dose it back in. So the one thing that I am doing is at the very least using it right at around day 28, 27, heading into the first couple of days of my cycle so that I'm mitigating at least that migraine and some of those symptoms in relation to low progesterone and estradiol.
Have you spoken to Karen Martell about the migraine thing?
Yes. Oh, she and I have talked.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Consistently.
She's like, she's hacked it. I'm like, I don't remember what she did, but it was quite.
I know what she's done. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's so funny once you start having conversations about what you're going through, your lived experience. It's amazing how society has really created a situation where we feel like we need to suffer in silence. And so you don't realize how many other women are suffering. And then you say something and they're just like, oh, me. Oh, like all of a sudden everyone comes out of you're like, where have you been? Like,
It's exactly what happened with my hip surgery. And the same thing. And I've always been very transparent about it. I'm very athletic. And so people are like, you? And I'm only 54. Like, how is that? But when you start sharing more and more, you do get a lot of people out of the woodwork. And then so they don't feel alone anymore. And I don't either, because there was a long time I'm like, why me? What's going on? It doesn't make any sense. And then you hear the stories from everyone else. And I think it's really inspiring. So it's great you guys have connected with that. And I've got Dr. Elena Gross coming on. I don't know if you know her.
Yeah.
She was recommended by someone else about migraines. So I think it'll be interesting to hear what she says.
I've had them since I was abused as a child, and I had them since I was 7 years old due to head trauma. And they rocked my world until I was in my 30s, really until I got my hormones and everything aligned. And I was okay for a while. Like I would have maybe one a year. And then in my pregnancy at 41 years old, I had over 100 migraines during my pregnancy. And they have continued since then. And my son's about to be 4 in a month. And so they've been pretty consistent. It's so funny. Most women who have migraines, they disappear during pregnancy, and mine they just came right back. And so it's very interesting. Not sure why. I mean, obviously hormones. And so it's really been hormone related ever since. And then I had a brain injury last summer that did not help that situation. So the brain injury led to more migraines since last summer. So yeah, I'm still mitigating it. But drugs, I'm using medication. I mean, that's the thing about migraines is it's a progressive syndrome. And I think during my pregnancy, I avoided taking a lot of medications. I'm having a child at 41. I'm trying to mitigate all the ways in which I'm causing any type of toxic load to this beautiful little embryo growing inside of me. And so I think by allowing a lot of these migraines to be unchecked during my pregnancy, they kind of progressed. So that's what doctors will always say. Any type of a really good neurologist worth their weight in salt when it comes to migraines is you have to manage them with medicine because they'll get out of control. So and I've tried everything under the sun, diets, restrictions, everything. I'm a very disciplined person. And so I can give it up, all of it.
Yeah.
and I've tried everything, but also I breastfed for a long time too, until my son was 2.5 years old. It was actually due to the brain injury that I couldn't keep breastfeeding. And so I let a lot of those migraines keep going through without being medically managed during those years. It's amazing how much we sacrifice for our children.
It's true, but I think many women would do the same thing. I mean, you're carrying this child, so you don't want to
take a bunch of Excedrin migraine in the system, especially as and we're not even going to get into pregnancy and women in perimenopause. But I thought about what I was coming with. I had a Hashimoto's thyroiditis, so I had an autoimmune condition. I was already older. I mean, not that I wasn't really working hard for high levels of egg quality, but it is what it is. Like.
It's a geriatric pregnancy,
I wasn't 20,
right?
Exactly. And so I did so much to prepare for him, but I was like, okay, when you look at when I looked at the checklist of how to ensure his metabolic and neurological development, I had a couple of the marks in the wrong direction. You have an autoimmune condition. You're over the age of 40. You can probably have developed a pretty nice toxic load over the years. As I'm looking at that, I'm like, okay, what can I mitigate during this journey? And so looking back, I was like, oh, probably didn't help my migraine progression over the years. So, but that's a side journey. Yes, it is. It is.
You have good tools, you get good knowledge, and then,
yes, I do.
And then
I've got good drugs.
And good drugs. So,
you know what I'm saying? Oh, so my mama. So I know we're talking about, so sleep routine, she had her oils, but ultimately it was really honoring, like calming my mom. I don't know if we were 20 years old or even early 30s, we could race do you remember racing into bed? Like you could
Yes.
just jump into bed and just fall asleep. And like now you got to wine and dine your system. Not by no means wine, but like
Yeah.
you got to seduce your body into sleep. It's a whole thing. And my mom still was pretending that she could just do what she was doing at 20. I was like, can you please seduce your body into sleep? So she had all these little sleep rituals that she did to calm her system down. And so that was a big part of her routine as well. Her recalibrating that nervous system and getting the sleep that she needed. And then the biggest thing, that probably the biggest lever, was her nutrition. So she was I wouldn't call it under muscled, but definitely not eating anywhere near the amount of protein she needed. There was a lot of inflammation. She was eating a lot of peanut M&Ms. And so it gives a lot of sugar. And so we did an elimination protocol in her, a big gut and liver protocol where
Is that
we
hard
eliminated
for her? Because that's for some people
she
going.
was, I think I get my discipline. I mean, I'm definitely more disciplined than my mother, but she is pretty darn disciplined and she was very motivated to feel a lot different. She wanted the hot flashes gone. She wanted all of it gone. And so sugar was gone, added sugar, processed sugar gone, grains gone, dairy was gone, anything ultra processed food, no sodas. That was her. She had to have her little Coke every now and then. I'm like, girl, it's gone. So all of it was gone. It was fiber rich. 90 days.
She did 90 days.
She dropped 30 pounds.
Wow.
30 pounds, a lot of inflammatory weight. Her brain was sharper. She had more energy. And that's what propelled her back into sports. Like that was what she had the energy to play tennis. She hired a tennis coach and she had the energy. She was sleeping. She was able to get up early again. I mean, the woman still works till this day. She is up at 4:30 every morning with her running group.
Wow.
At 64 years old.
Amazing. So when she reincorporated some of these foods, how did you do it?
She wasn't allowed to do that. No, I'm kidding. I actually came to her house with a big trash bag. I cannot do that for all of you guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, let's go through your kitchen.
So she shifted her diet, because actually once you do 90 days, you kind of get used to it and it's not so hard anymore. And you that's like your new normal.
I would say she pretty much stayed eating that way for years. I mean, some cheats here and there, obviously, but for the most part, I always tell people when you feel what it feels like to feel good in your body, your digestive system's working, you've got energy, your brain is firing on all cylinders, like you don't want to go back. You just don't.
Yeah.
And I will say sugar's her biggest. I mean, everybody. That's the thing that sneaks in. I would say the pandemic is where she really kind of probably cut more corners than she would have loved. But I would say for years, she kept the 30 pounds off. I mean, years and years and years, and had the energy to train for marathons and all of it.
Did she notice that she was more sensitive as she reincorporated some of this stuff in and had an erectile reaction?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's nothing worse than you eating some ultra processed food or some greasy Mexican food or something, and you just feel like crap. And then she'll notice, and I don't know if anyone listening has noticed this as well, but especially if you eat sugar later in the night or you have a glass of wine, it's a good chance you're going to have a hot flash or night sweats that night. And so she noticed these subtle things or you have to get up and pee. Again, the insulin resistance, especially we're relatively insulin resistant at night, you're going to see those types of subtle metabolic changes, those subtle blood glucose issues. And so these were the types of things that would come up. And she was like, oh, no, we're not. This hasn't happened in months or however long. I'm not going back to that. But I think also what women will notice, my mom in particular, was inflammation. She would notice that inflammation. She would see that 3 pounds come back on. And she's like, oh gosh. And you look at what you ate that day and you're like, oh, it was definitely that. Or she would also notice if she ever had a sandwich with bread, she would be so tired. Let's say she had a sandwich for lunch, so exhausted. She would be crawling through the rest of her day because of a blood sugar crash.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So what kind of essential oils did you recommend that she take? And was it just at night?
I know she was, obviously I had her using the ones at night because I think that having an anchor, something that smells so amazing that can really help to calm that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So that really the control system of the amygdala, just kind of calming that system down. It sends the brain a safety signal that everything is okay, that we can relax now. Everything's good. Nothing's wrong. That's what I love about essential oils is they can tell the brain that nothing is wrong. And a lot of us, as much as that could be a mantra for every single person, like nothing's wrong, because our brain defaults to everything's wrong. Everything's going, everything's wrong. I need to worry about this. I need to be concerned about that. That essential oils bypass thought and reason and consciousness, and you just go straight into that amygdala and just shuts things down, calms things down. It's really profound in that way. So, but then I had her using, again, when she was up in the morning. You can imagine getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning. I don't. I don't do it. I mean, that takes a brave soul. She uses oils like eucalyptus and peppermint to awaken the senses, open up airways, kind of wake her system up. She used a lot of like wintergreen and peppermint for any necks, aches, and pains. So as she was training. And then again, my mom, I think the one thing I've always heard my mother say, and me too, I'm very much her daughter. I don't care how much energy I have, I will take more. I will always take more. If you got some to give, like I'll take it. Because my mom's like, oh, I just need more energy. I'm just tired. And so we used oils really to help give her a little energy boost. And my favorite combination is any citrus oil, whether it's grapefruit or orange or even lemon combined with peppermint. And you just breathe it in and it's like an instant energy boost. So she would carry a little blend of that around anytime she was heading into work or she was going from work to a tennis match, just to kind of give herself a little something. Sometimes we just need that little something to get us into the next gear, to the next thing. And God knows it's always the next thing for us as women. It's always something.
When I recommend people to get some sleep hygiene, I often say, just make your bedroom a spa. Like what happens when you go into a spa? They have the lights are down, they're low, you've got some soft music playing, you probably smell lavender or some kind of nice scent, and you're just comfortable. So, and I always thought, well, this can work because if your brain is reminding yourself of that last massage that you went to when you went to that spa, how relaxed you were, then can very much go into this mode. And it's kind of like a baby where we give a baby a bath and we give them some water and then we read them a book and we tuck them into bed. It's the same thing.
It's the same routine. How did we lose the routine?
Yeah.
I live that routine every night with my 3-year-old.
Yes.
It's eating, play, bath, pajamas, brush teeth, read the books, cuddle, lights off. Like it is the same routine every night. It does not change. And I'm like, how did we forget that? How do we forget that routine? Oh, like that's the routine. I always tell people, treat your sleep and sleep routine like it's $1 million meeting.
Yes.
Cancel $1 million meeting? No, you would not. So yeah, that's how I consider it. Like the second my son's asleep and I take my supplements, it is game on. Do not try to talk to me. My husband's always trying to talk to me about a landing page or something in my business. I'm like, are you trying to talk to me right now? Like, I just put my hand up. I'm like, and once the bedroom door is closed, you open that door. I'm like, you better be something. Someone better be dying. Like, it better be $1 million meeting. So I do not play. I have my supplements already ready, my water, and I'm a big fan. I love reading before bed. I think that's one of the best ways. I am such an avid reader. And so, or maybe it's a meditation to listen to, but yeah, and be consistent. Have a consistent bedtime, have a consistent wake time, treat it like it's $1 million meeting.
I sometimes say, treat yourself like a 5-year-old. You wouldn't let your 5-year-old disrupt his routine. So
no, you keep them on point. And one of the biggest reasons we do that, at least for me, the come through is that consistency is safe. The body knows they're safe. And we deserve to feel safe too, just like our little preschoolers used to need to. I actually have a real actual one. So I live in that experience every day. And he deserves to feel safe. He deserves consistency, to know what to expect. His little brain deserves to know what his night and bedtime routine feels like. And so my husband and I, we never stray from that. ever.
Wow.
And then I'm like, why don't we do the same for ourselves? My husband's a night owl. He'll be up till 2 a.m. I'm like, well, you're getting up when your son gets up. I don't care. Like, that's on you. Like,
That's your
I don't know what to tell
problem.
you. I'm clocking 8 hours over here. Okay.
But it's important, especially when you're going through
Yeah.
perimenopause. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's
It is
unique.
it's the biggest factor. It's especially after my brain injury, the number one thing that will make or break my day, make or break my brain functioning is sleep. If I don't clock 8+ hours of sleep, I will know and I will feel it. And I just won't be able to show up the way that I want to. And I think a lot of us think we have a lot of wiggle room. Yeah, maybe you did when you were 20, but you don't when you're in your 40s or beyond. You just don't.
That's one thing. I mean, I never forget you, Molly Eastman. I don't know if you know her. She's got a podcast, Sleep is a Skill. Sleep is her jam. She's an expert in this. And she says that every single sleep conference that she goes to, the one thing that they say every time at every single meeting, they never let it go, is to have the consistent wake and sleep time. And no matter what. So
it's everything.
That makes the biggest impact on our sleep.
Yeah.
And it's just with our lives, it's who does that anymore, right? It's with a modern lifestyle, and it's just important we get back to those rituals, those routines, and just try it out for a week. My gosh, let's see how you feel after.
I promise you,
down.
it'll change your life. We just, I mean, I think about us as women, that deep intuition, that deep knowing in our body and honoring that body. It's really just honoring our biological clock. It's honoring our body's wisdom. And I feel like as tapped in as we are, we can continue to optimize honoring our bodies. And it's one of the greatest gifts we can give ourselves, and the greatest gifts we can give to all the things that we're showing up for. I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't have the energy to show up for your family, your partners, your relationships, your business, whatever it may be, it's a profound impact on your life and on your environment. And so for me, I want to not only feel good in my body, but I also want to give my life the level of energy that it deserves.
And those around you deserve it too. You can show up as a better person. So let's wrap up and have some the tips that we talked about for a woman who, in addition to your hormone therapy, or instead of, if that's what you choose, to have a smoother transition. You spoke a lot about the diet and the lifestyle and getting that sleep routine. So what would you say are the top, say, 4 or 5 things that a woman needs to know in order to make this a smoother transition?
Absolutely. One, mindset. I think mindset's the number one player here. We get to, again, menopause is inevitable. Suffering is absolutely optional. You get to pivot. Your body is changing without permission. I know it is. It very much is. There's a lot going happening behind the scenes, under the hood. And you get to decide whether you're going to resist against it or you're going to work with your body. I always say you're in a fork in the road. Either you're in default mode or you decide to embrace the changes and really take actions to become your future vision self, like who you imagine you're going to be 5, 10, 15 years from now. And I think that's exactly what my mom did. And that's what I'm doing as well, is like, who do I want to be at 50, at 55, at 60? How do I want to show up? How do I want to be living my life? What level of freedom am I looking to create? And then operate from that future version of yourself. And I think if we can stay in that mindset, like it is, the world is our oyster. We get to operate in the way that we would love to feel. So that's number one, mindset. Number 2 is, again, we talked about it already, really honoring your biological clock, right? And that means protecting your sleep like it's $1 million meeting, getting outside in sunshine. The next thing I would say is movement is life. I know we think about those resistance training workouts. I used to do the big hour workouts every single day, and then I would sit like I'm doing right now all day. And what I've learned is that movement throughout your day is probably going to be the biggest impact. And movement outside in nature is even bigger. And so walking after meals, walking between meetings, that would be I would say the number one longevity lifestyle hack I can bring to this conversation is move as much as you can throughout the day. And it doesn't, I mean, I'm a big fan of weight training. I think we should be doing lifting heavy stuff. Absolutely. But more so than that is clocking at least 10,000+ steps a day. And I literally have 15-pound weights next to my desk at all times. I can't even walk past them without tripping on them. So I will do squats with those multiple times a day. I will do mountain climbers. I'll do push-ups. Like I'll just knock them out in between meetings. But the thing that feels like the biggest bang for my buck is being out in nature in sunlight. So that's the next thing. Next is really tailoring your nutrition around balancing your blood glucose, your blood sugar. It is the ultimate biomarker of longevity and of metabolic health, which is literally the energy that every single cell operates in. And if you don't exactly know what's going on with your blood glucose, I highly recommend, if you can do it. I know these are women all over the world, but if you can get one, wear a continuous glucose monitor for even 2 weeks, and you will learn so much about yourself and your body, not just what you eat, but also your sleep, your movement, your stress, all of it will show up on that continuous glucose monitor. It's one of the best ways that we can really understand our cellular longevity. So that would be another thing. The next thing I would say is punctuate your day. And I know, again, I'm a busy mom. I get it, with as many life-giving self-care rituals. So for me, I'm a big fan of pleasure stacking. So I will walk outside and send a voice memo to one of my best friends. Or I will hug my son and do a dance party in the middle of the day. So I always believe that we can pleasure stack the things that feel good. Or I have an infrared sauna. I will read a romantic fantasy book in my infrared sauna. So I always pleasure stack the things that are going to really move the needle for me. And again, it's 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's never a long time, but it is enough time to help regulate my nervous system. My nervous system default is built on efficiency, is built on rushing, is built on survival. And every day I get to be intentional about resetting those patterns. And I have to be, because that, or I'll just go straight into survival mode on accident. It's like the hardest, if there was a hard drive, that would be it in my little nervous system. And so I build in a lot of these safety mechanisms, these beautiful rituals that, again, are punctuated throughout my day, that help to ground me back into love and joy and connection. And I would say that is a big part. When we're not feeling well, our world gets small. Everything gets small. All of a sudden, our friendships aren't there. We're not connecting with people as much. And one of the things that I think for me has been a major priority is constantly seeing women in real life every week, my besties, my best friends, voice memoing people every day. Again, I usually do it when I'm walking, or I'll do it when I'm on the Peloton or something like that right before bed. And just making sure that I am in connection with the women that hold safe space for me. So those would be the big pillars that I would say will really move the needle for how you feel. And then supplementation and hormone replacement and all those optimizers are amazing as well. And you get to tailor fit that to your body, your goals and needs.
I'm happy you mentioned the community and the women around you, because I think that's for all of us women, we are communicators, and I think we are programmed for connection and community. As I understand, we have more oxytocin than a man, because we have Absolutely. This bonding hormone for our babies, for our friends and all that. So, and I don't know if you've know about the Harvard study of adult development, but in gerontology, we learned a lot about aging and longevity, and the Harvard study shows that this is one of the longest longitudinal studies that started in 1938. It's been going on still continues, looking at many generations. And it was 2017, they concluded that more than exercise, more than smoking, or more than diet, more than anything, the one thing that had the biggest impact on people living a happier, longer life was strong social bonds, strong social connections. And this goes across the board for men and women. And I think it's one thing, it's so easy to let go sometimes in our busy lives, and we have work, and you have your kids, you have a lot of things going on. And we tend to, especially if you're feeling bad, if you don't feel right, you don't feel well, or you're injured or something's happened, well, you tend to hibernate. And It's really important. And the older I get, the more I realize, wow, that is absolutely true. So I would say that's got to be such a high thing on the list. Don't forget your girlfriends. Don't forget your tribe. It's absolutely fundamental to aging well. And as well, there are studies also showing how women who have a strong support system, whether it's their girlfriends or their partner, they tend to have a better menopause experience. So there you go.
I love it. I will say that I speak for a lot of people who these last couple of years have been the hardest, whether it's health challenges or just the landscape of all the things that have shifted and changed. I mean, we're recording this on election day here in the States. And it's just a lot. It's a lot going on. And relationships breaking up. I feel like a lot of people are in transition. And I don't think I would have been able to get through these last couple of years without the support of my dearest and best friends. I had a coffee date with a friend early in the morning yesterday. My husband took my son to school, which is so sweet of him to hold space for me. I had a preschool mom play date. Even my nanny was there too. So my nanny watched all the kids so that the moms could all hang out. We did that yesterday afternoon. And then we're hosting Friendsgiving tonight for 14 people, including preschool friends and everything. And so all my best friends are going to be here tonight. And so it's become make it a priority. Making it a priority. It changes everything. I can't imagine. I have book besties. I mean, I have so many different beautiful conversations about all kinds of things all the time. And I can't imagine a life without my friends in it. Like a lot of my girls know that I'm in my late luteal right now. We all know where we are in our cycle. I know one of my girlfriends is like day 25, another one's day 14. Everybody knows their cycles. And it's just really great because we all know where we stand. We all can hold each other in that moment. I had a friend of mine cancel because she was day 3 and she had the worst cramps. And I'm also helping to mitigate that for her too. But she's like, can I cancel our thing today? I just can't even get out of bed. And I was like, absolutely. So like, it's so nice to be able to be safe spaces for each other. I don't know if anyone can hold you like your girlfriends can hold you because they get it, they know. And that's so beautiful.
No, always invest in your network, spend time nurturing your network, and a lot of the good things come out with that. So before I let you go, I want to just quickly, because you have a supplement line.
I do.
You know a lot about supplements.
A lot about supplements.
So and I get this question asked a lot, what is the best supplement for hot flashes? I get the question about menopause, but I'm like, well, which symptom are you trying to deal with? So let's choose one right now for hot flashes. What would you say?
I mean, is it just one? I would say the ones that I know for sure that help. Hot flashes can be related to blood glucose issues as well. So I would say berberine or minoxidil, about 500 milligrams. I would say minoxidil, 1,000 milligrams, berberine, 500 milligrams. Magnesium glycinate can be really beneficial for hot flashes as well. When we think about herbs, you think black cohosh, but that they're hit and miss. For a lot of women, it doesn't work. And so I usually lean on kind of the blood sugar or something like magnesium for mitigating hot flashes.
Oh, interesting.
And also I love peppermint oil, like literally a peppermint oil spritz, like on the spot will mitigate a hot flash.
Really? Oh, so if you could take an essential oil and put it in a bottle of, I use this thing called hyaluronic. It's hyaluronic acid. Just get some water in it, and I just spray it, and it's unscented. So I would simply.
I love that with rose oil, like a little rose.
Yeah,
it's so yummy.
Rose oil.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, great. Okay, tips. There's one supplement I just learned about. If I could remember the name, you'll maybe know better. I think it's called pincogenol. PYNC, something like a pincogenol. You haven't heard of this one? This one, I wish I could get the name correctly, but evidently this is something new for me. And I thought, I'll throw that one at you because it's evidently supposed to be really great for hot flashes and it's a new one. But let's stick with the blood sugar balance ones. I love that. And we can also find your supplements on your website. Where
Essentially Whole, drmarisa.com/store or shop. But a lot of my supplements are really geared towards women in peri, not that they can't be for women in menopause. I have sleep supplements. Obviously, I have magnesium glycinate, which so many of us really need. I mean, all of us are magnesium deficient. You can imagine when we're running on fumes, we're just burning through everything. B vitamins. I have a activated methylated B complete that is an energizer bunny. I always tell people take it in the morning. Do not take it past 2:00. I have an adrenal love blend that's just phenomenal. I love adaptogenic herbs. And that's another thing. I mean, adaptogenic herbs can be really helpful for hot flashes as well. Things like ashwagandha and rhodiola. Again, not specifically that. It's just more regulating the nervous system, but also for stress and energy. I love adaptogenic herbs. And then I love to support the gut and liver. So a good liver support blend, something with polyphenols and antioxidants are really helpful. And then also always honoring your gut. So I always tell women, take a digestive enzyme with every single meal. You probably aren't making them the way they used to, especially if you're not eating 10 different plants every single day. You're just not getting the amount of digestive enzymes. So especially if you have food sensitivities, you may notice you're like, oh, when I eat pizza or when I eat cheese or something. So digestive enzymes can help break that down. And then also a good probiotic. I mean, I'm a big fan of probiotic and prebiotic rich foods like ferments and like not only cruciferous veggies and leafy greens and polyphenol rich berries, but also having a probiotic would be really helpful too. So I think about the things that we really need that are going to support our cellular longevity. The other thing, I mean, I've looked at thousands of labs, and I would say only 1% of the labs I've looked at in women in midlife, their vitamin D levels are anywhere near where they need to be. So I always recommend 5,000 IUs of vitamin D with K1 and K2.
Good ones. I got all of those.
Hey,
and
okay, good.
and I do take all of those, and I would love to, your supplements themselves, I'm in Europe. Are they only deliverable in the US or do you deliver abroad?
Deliverable. No, well, they are. I mean, we have workarounds for abroad, but I know that they're relatively expensive workarounds. So they're really mostly available in the US. But what I always recommend, I know it's a little bit of research. I mean, you can always take a look at the supplements and match that. I mean, obviously vitamin D supplements are very available. Omega-3s are very available. Magnesium, some type of liver support blend that's got the antioxidants, the polyphenol, glutathione, NAD. You're look at those types of ingredients and then say, okay, let me see if I can match that here in the US or in Canada or Australia. That would be my recommendation.
Excellent. All right. So people can find you on your website, drmariza.com. And on Facebook, Dr. Mariza Snyder, you're on X now and Instagram. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience? Any programs or things coming up, events?
I don't know when this is going live. I have a Fix Your Metabolism class coming up. It's my MHR class. It's my metabolism and hormone program, reset program. I love it because, again, so many of us, when we head into perimenopause and menopause, we become more insulin resistant. We start to see that weight gain. We become a little bit more inflamed. It's just the result of those hormones fluctuating and declining, and probably lifestyle. Again, we really have to make some pivots. And so that program is designed to do just that. And so, but I do have also, if women would love to know more about their metabolic status, I have a metabolism assessment specifically for women. So much of what we look at our doctor's office or what we see online is based on men. And we are more sensitive to blood glucose levels. We're more sensitive to a lot of these markers that what is normally in range. Your doctor will say, oh, everything's normal, everything's in range. For us as women, when they're even slightly out of range, we begin to see an increased risk of cardiovascular disease or prediabetes and things like that. And so I think when we can know our markers for ourselves, when those labs are given to us, it really puts the power back in our hands. So I have a link to that too. I can give you that just spells it all out. It gives you lab numbers. It gives you the labs to ask for. It gives you what it means so that you feel so empowered with that information. Most of our doctors don't even know how to attribute any of that to us as women or us as women in midlife. And so you'll get a whole lot of gaslighting and it's normal. And you're like, I don't feel normal at all. Like something isn't right. Like I put on 10 pounds. You're telling me this is normal? Like it came on overnight. I sneezed and it showed up. And so we deserve, again, a much more bio-individual approach to what's going on with our bodies. And so that's how this guide is specifically tailored.
Super. That's super useful. Yeah. It just drives me nuts when I get women here saying, well, I feel like shit, but my estradiol is within the menopause range. I'm like,
oh my
well,
gosh.
yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, you don't really want to be in that range. If
no,
you're
you do not. I'm just,
well.
That's what you'll get. You'll get this answer of like, oh, well, you're optimal for menopause. You mean it's zero? Like, what does that mean? Like, or it just drives me crazy. Or like, oh, you're not pre-diabetic, but I'm a point away. Like, or 84% of people who are pre-diabetic, many of them are women, have no idea because doctors they don't say anything. You're 104, milligrams per deciliter here in the States, and that's pre-diabetes. But until you're 126 milligrams per deciliter or more, that's type 2. We really don't say anything. But once you cross the 100 milligram per deciliter threshold, your risk for cardiovascular disease increases twofold. Like unlike men, like no one should be above 100 milligrams per deciliter. I don't care what any doctor says, but men have more wiggle room than we do. We don't have that wiggle room. And it breaks my heart. I look at labs. I've looked at hundreds of labs where I'm like, did anyone tell you you're pre-diabetic? And no, my doctor just was like, didn't say anything. I'm like, what? Like that's, I call that lazy medicine.
It's lazy medicine. I've had people come to me with their labs and saying, well, the doctor told me I'm pre-diabetic. And I said, well, what did he say to do? And they said, well, nothing. Just come back when you're diabetic. And she came to me because she knew it wasn't right. She's, I don't think this is right. I've been told I have pre-diabetes. I think I should do something about it. And I was shocked that her doctor didn't say it. I said, just continue on with your life as it's normal, and we'll see you when you're diabetic. Like, didn't make any sense. So glad you mentioned that. I love that you have this information for us, and I'll put this all in the show notes, as well as how to find you in the show notes. And before I let you go, do you have any last words for women going through the menopause transition?
The big message I always love to share is that you really are the CEO of your health, just like you are the CEO of your household, your family. Like, let's be honest, like we get to wear that hat. No one's going to take care of your body the way that you're going to take care of it. No one's going to know it the way that you know it. Yes, you can bring someone like me on to be there in the journey, but I always want you to know that the power resides in you. And when we take ownership of that and we are empowered by that, that's where I feel like the big change begins to happen. And the other thing I think is important is that you're worthy of feeling amazing. You're worthy of feeling great in your body. And I think when we can anchor into that, that's when the magic happens.
Oh, thank you so much, Marisa. And I am excited to have you on again, because I think we would love to have you speak a little bit more too about your experience and metabolic health, and can't wait to have you on again.
Thank you.